Call to order. Note that the official meetings of the RTD Board of Directors are digitally recorded and video recorded and will be captioned and made available to the public via the board's website. I'm Lynn Geisinger. I'm chair. We always start off with a safety moment, and I'll just say that if anything comes up, go out this way, out the door, up the stairs, and that's the emergency exit. I don't want to always turn my safety moment to a bicycle moment, but in light of what's happened in Boulder and Denver the last 2 weeks, I do want to remind people that it's we share the road. I just read an interesting thing in Streets blog today that there's a rule. It was a study in Minnesota. They have the same rule that you have to pass a bicycle rider by at least 3 feet. And they said of the people who who encroach and don't give that space, 75% of the time it's when they're going around women, which is probably women are smaller or something. I don't know what that is, but just be sure to give space as you're going around. Yeah, that's right. And finally, download the Transit Watch app. It's proven to be a great thing to have for safety on all of our buses and trains. All right, thanks. We have no I think the roll call was digitally taken, so we're through with that. We have no recommended actions tonight, so we're moving right on to updates. And we're very excited tonight to have the State Demographer, Elizabeth Garner, join us. She's put together a special program for us, and I am committed to keeping this to 20 minutes. So Elizabeth has a 10 to 15 minute presentation, and then we'll take a few questions from the board. She has a much longer presentation. It's like 45 minutes that we could, I think we're all going to find this fascinating. We can always schedule. She's already offered to come back and do that in a study session or something, but I will turn this over to Elizabeth now. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna, where's my magic layout? Oh, she's got it set, it's going.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Can you, is that on? No, I think it's on.
Okay.
Yep, perfect, thank you. So thank you guys very much for inviting me to be part of your program today, I appreciate it. As Lynn said, we've got a lot of data and information, so if you ever find the need to do a deeper dive or look at a different segment, let us know, because again, we were created to actually create population estimates and forecasts to be used by state agencies and local governments, and so we are a resource funded by your taxpayer dollar. So please use us. We've got a great website as well that you can pull down different slices and dices. So what I'm going to do is hit the primary main trends impacting the state. Maybe. What am I doing wrong, ma'am? I can just say click out loud and you can click for me.
There we go.
All right. So now we need to go back. Okay, there we go. All right, so some of the big transitions to be watching in the state as a whole, and interesting probably for RTD as well, is that we're seeing population growing at a slowing rate. And most of you probably don't believe me. And that's fine. But it's important to know that because we've built a lot of models in the state that are built on a growth forecast. And so when we start seeing growth slowing, what does that mean for some of these? What are the implications? We've also seen a concentrated growth along the I-25 corridor, which certainly impacts RTD and the rest of the state, understanding that growth has been concentrated in one primary area along the I-25 corridor. Talking a lot about migration, and I'm going to actually try and convince you that migration is good. And I know that that might be contrary to a lot of popular belief, but we really do need people to keep the system moving. And so how do we attract and retain the best and the brightest? Part of it is really transportation, or actually a large portion of it's transportation. So understanding the role that you guys play in that, I think, is really important. Aging, certainly an impact to RTD and our population. And you, well, I was going to say, did anybody celebrate a birthday last year? All right, so we know that aging is really important to the state because we do it every year, and we're going to be really changing a pretty big dynamic that really could impact transportation significantly, not just from ridership, but time of ridership as well. Increase in race and ethnic diversity, especially at our youngest ages, and so making sure that we're also creating products where we're being very conscious about ethnic and racial diversity within our product base. Slowing income growth, which actually could maybe create more demand for RTD if we've got lower incomes, but what does that also mean to tax base and everything else that might be funding the system? And then understanding as well as what's happening to changes to industries. As we're changing our industrial pace, where does transportation fit into that? Where are businesses locating? How will timing of businesses change that would also potentially impact ridership? Click, because I'm not working. I don't know why it's not doing. That's there. So point it at your head. Now I know. Perfect. So, I'm sorry. So it's always important to understand that Colorado is part of the United States. So whatever's happening to the U.S. will impact Colorado. The U.S. is at about 327 million people. We're increasing by about 2 million people a year. That's a 0.6 annual average growth rate. Slowest growth rate in the United States since the Great Depression in the 1930s. And I've had to say that 3 years in a row and consecutively, it is slower each year. So we are slowing down. Even though we don't probably feel it here, we are slowing down in the U.S. as a whole, which will impact the state. We're ranked 7th fastest at 1.4, which is, you can quick math, over twice as fast as the U.S. as a whole, behind some pretty fast states. 8th in total growth, increasing by 80,000 this last year. But keep in mind, Texas increased by 378,000. So there is this big differential within the U.S. as a whole in terms of that growth. And we've increased by about 666,000 since 2010. So if we look at this growth along Colorado, the red, orange, yellow counties are the counties that have increased in population. The shades of blue have declined. The darkest colored red being the fastest growth or the largest growth in that number. And so what we can see is that even though Colorado is one of the faster growing states, one of the better economies in the U.S., we've seen this concentrated growth along the I-25 corridor. In fact, 95% of the growth since 2010 has been along the I-25 corridor at this Front Range area, contrary to historical trends, which was closer to 83 to 84%. So we have seen a significant change, and the question is why? Is it access? Is it access to networks? Is it access to internet? Is it because of the industries we're growing? What's creating this bifurcation? And so I think that's a really important question for transportation because of the role that you play, especially along the I-25 corridor. But what does it mean for the future as well in terms of growth and development within the state? I'm trying. What am I not hitting? When we change in total population, this is really important to identify, is that we've got two components. The bottom part that's blue is called natural increase. It's births minus deaths. So again, births minus deaths. So on net, that is a baby. Keep that in mind. That is a baby. Births minus deaths. The red is net migration, the ins minus the outs. We can see natural increase starting to slow down. We can see net migration also going through these peaks and troughs. We can see in 1973, so this starts in 1970, we had 1 year over 100,000. In the 90s, we had, into the early 2000s, we had 7 years over 100,000. We have not had over 100,000 since 2001. Yet, what do we hear consistently? Unprecedented growth. And I'm like, no, look that up in the dictionary. We have been there before. We're at 1.4. In the 90s, we were 3% annual average growth rate. In the 70s, we were 5% annual average growth rate. We have seen this all before, so whenever anybody says that, just know they don't know what the word means. Did I go too far? Oh, okay, perfect. I'm sorry, one more. I went back too far, and now I've screwed it up. One of the biggest things to understand, though, with this slowdown in the natural increase is because we're seeing an increase in deaths and a slowdown in births. And that's what's creating that downward pressure on natural increase. When we migrate people to Colorado, this is the age distribution of our migrants, so very concentrated in the 22 to 37-year-old. Very few people at older ages, but you can see that little bump right around 65. We get a slight positive in-migration on that 65-plus population, but it's very small relative to the rest of the state. Next slide. Why do people move here? It's great. It's great because there's jobs, right? And so what's really important to understand is over time we can see as there's stronger job growth, there's stronger net migration. As there's weaker job growth, there's weaker in-migration. So when we're hearing a lot of people talk nowadays about limiting population, it's interesting. I'm like, all right, so you're not a fan of people, I get it. What do you think about jobs? I'm like, oh, I love jobs. Jobs are the best thing in the world. I'm like, all right, go with me. A job is a person. Housing unit is where that job sleeps at night. We need to learn how to balance and or use our transportation system to make that balance work well. And so it's really important, I think, for us to all understand that if you put a limit on housing units, that is only going to make housing increase. That's not going to limit the population because people will continue to come and come up with other alternatives. Click. Damn. Click. I'm just going to go click. It's also important to understand that age is an important piece in Colorado, an important change in Colorado, primarily because we always change our preferences based on age. What we do, what we buy, jobs that we create, the type of housing we want, how we participate in the labor force, our income levels, our service demands all change by age. Click. This is Colorado's age distribution, and what we can see is that the black line is at age 65. Nothing because there's magic at 65, it's just a nice line at 65. We can see our baby boomers in the purple. We can see on to the right of that, we've got our silent generation, our green Gen X, our purple boomers, our red millennials, and our blue next generation, and then the following generation after that. A couple of things to note is one is that our peak person in the state is 30 years old. The peak birth in the United States was in 1990. 1991. So it fits out perfect with our total population in the U.S. that our peak person is right there at 2930. We can see this slowdown after that because we have seen a decline in births every year. Right now we're about 7,000 fewer births per year than we had in 2007. Why do I say that? Because they're not entering kindergarten. They're not entering primary school. They're a big part of your base for high school students. They're not quite at that high school age yet because we started seeing this slowdown in 2007. But if you start seeing a slowdown in teens in a couple of years, it's because they weren't born. And that's really important to take into account and think about our total population. We can also see the folks that are aging into the 65 plus, which probably have a different ridership, time of ridership, not maybe as many commuters during the same pattern. So thinking about how that might strategically change within the system as well, I think is important. Click. Every county is different though. That was the state as a whole. This is Denver. Click. This is Douglas. So every county is different, so understanding your entire system, transportation system, is so important because you're going to get different riders and different types of riders based on the county that you're in and the age dynamic. And look at that significant age dynamic in Douglas County. Their peak person is 16. God, can you imagine having to, well, really their peak person is 50, but look at the youngins, 16. So that over the last several years, they've got an increasing number of 16-year-olds at an increasing rate. And imagine what that does to a system, especially if they're drivers. But again, important to see this distinction. Click. So if we look just in the short run between 2018 and 2025, our total forecast of the population is to increase at 10% per year. Our youngins, because we're not having the births, our under 17 are increasing only by 2%. Entering the labor force, about 10%. Prime working age, about 12%. Our older age workers, so the 55 to 64-year-olds, decline in population. So a declining rate because that's kind of the Gen X coming through the system. Retirement, 23%. Retired, 50%. Long-term care, 22%. So this is a significant change where we're seeing much more downward pressure on the youngins and an increase in pressure at that older age group. Next slide. We're also becoming more racially and ethnically diverse, and especially at our youngest age groups. What this slide shows is that at our population under the age of 18, currently about 43% people of color. If you look at our 65 plus, only about 16% people of color. If we then forecast that population to 2050, we can see that basically all ages under the age of 44 forecasted to be primarily people of color, so over 50% people of color over the, really looking at that age 44 and younger. So I think that this is really important to see, you know, are we being culturally sensitive? Are we being racially and ethnically sensitive when we're looking at transportation? If that does change by age. I don't know if it does. You guys are transportation experts. I'm not. But it's just a question to ask and see within the system. Next slide. So just a quick into the forecast. A lot of people ask, how do we do our forecasts? And we look at two different components. One is really this job demand. The other is a population supply. So we forecast jobs out into the future, looking at the U.S. as a whole and how Colorado fits into the U.S. picture. What industries do we have and how are they growing nationally and where do we fit? So we take that and we push that out into the future and we grow jobs based on our share of the U.S. At the same time, we take our current population, we age you through time, looking at birth rates and death rates based on age, race, and ethnicity, and that's our supply of workers. So we've got a supply of workers and our demand for workers. We bring them together, and where we need people, we migrate them in, and where we don't need people, we migrate them out. Next slide. And the reason I bring that up is because it's not hocus pocus. I mean, it's really, we model both of these things based on real demands. So if we look out into the future, we're forecasting Colorado's population to start slowing down. And that looks at the total population change. The black line is where we are right now, a short blip increase in demand for people in that migration, but then slowly slowing down out into the future. I think we hit our peak natural increase back in 2007, just because we're seeing this slowing in births and increase in deaths. But that circle where I circled that is really driven by retirements. We're forecasting over 1 million people leaving the labor force in the next 15 years, just based on our age distribution. And that's extending people's labor force participation rate, but slowing down out into the future. Next slide. Even with that in the case, we're forecasting Colorado to increase from about that 5.7 million currently to 8.1 million by 2050, with the largest share in that darkest blue, which is the Front Range. So that is 2.4 million, and I know I said slowing down, and that is slower. We used to have this forecast actually was closer to 9.1 million back in 2007 before the recession. So we are slowing things down based on age, based on economic climate, and based on the recession. Next slide. But even within that 2.4 million, 2 million along the Front Range. So if you're into Friends, more Friends. Denver metro area. There was a question on if you liked Friends or not. I like that. Denver metro area, 1 million. Up in the North Front Range, 600,000. South Front Range, 400,000, with the rest of that 2.4 million, so 400,000 around the rest of the state, with gray representing counties that we're forecasting flat to declines. So really growing this bifurcation between the parts of the state. Next slide. I could be wrong. There's a lot of risk to this forecast, and we know that, and you guys do forecasting all the time. Water, competitiveness with other states, policies, recessions could change this forecast. But the big picture to take away is that we are continuing to increase, but at a slowing rate. But a lot of that growth along the I-25 corridor, along this Front Range, with about 1 million, and all of the counties have bought in to that 1 million in this Denver metro area. Aging is really important for us to be looking at, and that's part of why we're slowing as a U.S. as a whole. Slowing because of the aging, slowing because of the slowing in births, concentrated growth along the I-25 corridor, definitely an aging population. So your client base, our client base for the state as a whole is aging, and I think we need to be very conscious and be looking at that. And becoming more racially and ethnically diverse. So with that, I'm just going to put a click, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to put that there so you see it, so that there's like subliminal messages that it's really important to participate in the census next year. And I think RTD is an important partner for Census 2020 and making sure that people around the state and around this Denver metro area are well aware of it, that it's important, it's easy and safe, and a lot of the dollars that we get to the state come from our count in Census 2020. So it's really important for all of us to be aware of that. So with that, I know I'm really close to not having any time for questions, but any questions?
Wow. We got a couple quick questions here. Yep. Kate. Director Williams.
LFPR.
Labor force participation rate.
Okay, Director Lewis.
So I have a question about the, let's see here. The point you said, and you said it more than once, the race and ethnic diversity increasing. And I was curious, is this, the slides don't have page numbers, so forgive me, it says diversity by age. If you have that based on demographics, and what story, or I guess I'm trying to reconcile like displacement and communities seeing less of themselves in their communities, and more of other ethnic diversities in their neighborhoods, and like what story is that telling you, or is there a story behind that? I'm trying to reconcile that we are seeing increases in race and ethnic diversity, but like at the neighborhood level, that may or may not be the experience.
So I think that's a really good question. Thank you very much. So we are seeing this, it's interesting, we are seeing this increase in race and ethnic diversity, and it's all age driven. So most of that diversity right now is really in our under 18 population.
Oh, I see.
And so then you just play that demographic model out and you age people through time. So if you were 18 last year, there's a good chance you're 19 this year. And so it's really easy then to age people through time. And so that diversity just happens kind of as a wave. And so it's really, and I'd even say it's our under 24 that's becoming much more diverse, and less so at the older ages. But you talk about neighborhoods, and, you know, and I think that's a really good question. We've got race and ethnicity by different race ethnic groups, by county and municipality, and a lot of people have it down to the census tract, and we know that we've talked about displacement and other things like that, but as a whole, as the system as a whole, we're actually seeing much more, but maybe that diversity isn't in the same places as we've seen it historically.
I see. So if we were to break this down by both age and county? Okay. That would look different depending on the county that you may, or municipality or whatever that you may be looking at.
Absolutely, every county. You know how the saying is if you know one county in Colorado, you know one county in Colorado. That's exactly the story. So I would be happy, feel free to connect with us if you'd
Sure.
like to look at this more in depth by certain area. I'd
Okay.
love to.
Thank you.
I am really sorry, but I think we have to cut this off. We have a long meeting, and that was our agreement. As I said, Elizabeth Garner has agreed to come back. She's got more to the presentation. We can set this up if we want to as a study session next year. And thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know how to-
Okay. It's all right. Somebody else is coming up. All right. Our next update, I have to find where we are, but Pauletta Tonilas talking about communication update.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. To start off with tonight, I would like to introduce our Senior Manager of Public Relations and Engagement, who has been hired since I was before you last, a couple of months ago. And that person is Marta Sapecki. I sent an email out when we hired Marta, but just wanted to introduce her and frame her experience. I'd like Marta to stand up, please.
Great.
So Marta is actually a familiar face and a friend to us of RTD because she has been a consultant in communications for many years and has worked for us as a consultant on the US 36 Bus Rapid Transit Project, on the Northwest Rail Project, and most recently on the State Highway 119 project. And she's a very seasoned engagement and media professional. And so we're very pleased to have her with us as a full-time staff member now. And so she's already been here for like 6 weeks. And the last time I was before you, I introduced Stephen Breyer, our Senior Manager of Marketing, but Stephen is also here tonight. We are filling the vacancies that we've had in the communications department. We also offered the job of market research manager to Jeff Tranguch, who was before you a couple of months ago with me and provided the presentation on the customer satisfaction survey. Jeff has been with us for 3 years and has done a fantastic job, and so he now is our manager of market research, and interviews are being done now for the creative services manager and the digital communications manager. So we are ramping up our staff. Happy to report, so I just wanted to make sure that I was able to socialize that with the board. Here to just talk to you about a couple of key high points from the last couple of months and where we're going from here. One of the big things our team is working on is the Reimagine RTD process and how the engagement and communications for that massive program that we're all going to be working on will occur. We, of course, will be working in concert with our partners of the consultant team, and you'll hear more about that a little later in the next committee meeting. But wanted to just give you a little highlight of the types of things that you can expect to see in the engagement process over the next couple of years of Reimagine RTD. We'll be doing community listening sessions. We'll be starting the engagement process with those and doing quite a bit of engagement in many different methods. Public meetings, stakeholder meetings, telephone town hall meetings, which you'll all, of course, be invited to be a part of, and we'll be doing one for each of you as we do every year. We'll be getting those on your schedule so that you can plan on those meetings as part of our engagement process. A speakers bureau will be going out and doing presentations, educating people on what is Reimagine RTD, what's the purpose, how are we looking to reimagine the mobility of the future, and how do people fit into that? Of course, online engagement is going to be very important. There are a lot of people who will not come to a public meeting, but they will do something from the comfort of their own home or on weekends to engage with us in an online fashion. We will be doing focus groups and a public opinion survey. Many of you mentioned that you would like for us to start hearing from people who are not riders. So why don't people ride? What would make them want to ride more? So we have a great opportunity through Reimagine RTD to do this first layer general public opinion survey, which we'll be working with our consultant partners on. And so that'll be part of the engagement process and listening and feedback, educational videos, pop-up events, and tablet engagement at various places and community events, media briefings, because the media is going to be our friends in this in terms of helping to keep the public in mass educated about this along the way. And the media has already started to tell this story with us as we launched last week, Reimagine RTD with Jarrett Walker. And then, of course, to keep our communications partners across the district very informed, because our PIOs and communications partners at all of our different entities will be key to get our information through their channels. So these are just some of the things that you'll be able to participate in. The other thing I want to make sure you're aware of is the CAC is very excited about participating with us and being part of the engagement and helping us to implement our engagement program. And so we'll be looking to the CAC as well. Let's see if I can do this now. Okay, there we go. So the LIVE program is live. We have been implementing our LIVE program and allowing people to take advantage of the application process through the PEAK system through the state since last Monday, the 29th. I can report that we are about somewhere in the 170 range of people who have successfully applied through the system so far, just in a week and a half. It's been a great collaboration with people across the whole metro area. And one of the things that we did was work with a marketing outreach firm, or not firm, a team of people who really helped us determine how best to communicate about the LIVE program. They also helped us come up with the name LIVE. I think we've talked to you about that before in previous sessions. But this group was really key in helping us message this and making sure that the language we use and the messaging was considerate and was the right tone. And so we're very happy that we've been able to launch this with all of our internal partners, and you'll have more of an update on this next week at the committee meetings. I don't know if I'm not pointing this in the right place. Okay. A quick update on commuter rail outreach efforts. You're aware that we have done community meetings about quiet zones to educate the public. We held a public meeting on the A line, one on the G line. In addition, we did a pancake breakfast on a Saturday in each corridor location. And the public meetings were actually fairly well attended for people to come out in the evening. The pancake breakfast, not as much, but it gave us that opportunity to do a little bit more of a organic kind of opportunity to talk with people. But we were glad with the feedback that we got and the questions. What our team has been doing is putting the answers to these questions together that came from the community. And we sent out newsletters to each of the community stakeholder lists with a link to those answers, and those are on our website. And so one of the ways that we want to keep the communities better informed is to do this periodic e-newsletter. To make sure that they're aware of not only when we might be blowing horns, but just on their corridor areas, things that are happening. And so we'll be sending that periodic email out as well. And then we're already starting on the quiet zone and safety education on the end line to get a head start and to get ahead of the game. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. We continue to be big news. One thing that I thought would be of interest to the board is to see the type of earned media that we are generating. Since January, we have had over 2,800 media stories, local, regional, national, international, about us and the things that we're doing. That translates into about 960 million touches through earned media, which is substantial. This is significant. And the little donuts that you see there just showcase in the first quarter, so from January to the end of March of this year, excuse me, the media stories that were neutral, positive, and more of a negative tone. And more of a negative tone can be that we had the derailment on the R line, or that somebody was robbed at a station, one of our light rail stations, or harassed on a light rail train. So those are all going to show negative tone. But you see that the positive earned media stories are quite a bit more than the negative. And then the neutral stories, which is just getting the information out, is significant. And we're getting the message out. From April to the end of July, we also have had significant media coverage. Obviously, we've had 50th anniversary rail opening, so that's been great. And I think the fact that we have so many neutral and positive stories combined says a lot about how people are telling our stories. And then just looking ahead, we have our all-employee event at Eelich Gardens on August 11th. The launch of our RTD newsroom, which is going to be a new page and a new entry into our RTD website that will allow us to showcase more videos, eventually podcasts, thought leadership pieces, the news that we're generating, almost like a news webpage. We're looking to launch that in early September. Our Reimagine RTD engagement, September, October will begin. And then enhanced rider alert system, which I think will be great for people who get our rider alerts because it will drill down more into a specific level and give them rider alerts about, for instance, a station that they typically get on at or a bus stop. And so that enhanced rider alert system will be happening this fall. And then the launch of our 50th anniversary new RTD jingle contest. For those of you that weren't at our 50th anniversary event, Dave he launched that and made mention of that, so you'll be seeing more about that. He's working on his jingle. So that's the update, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that the board has at this time.
Director Williams.
Can we get Peyton Manning and that country guy to work on the jingles?
It's
They could be
open to
doing
anyone.
it on a train, you know? They could put on a train. And,
That would be awesome if
okay,
they
there you
submitted
go.
something.
I'll ask him if you want.
Director Minton.
On the RTD newsroom page, do you have room for, one, our financial transparency portal, and secondly, safety reports?
So the resources links, where we will have a section that'll be resources. We haven't worked specifically about what else we would put on there for financial transparency or for safety, but without question, these are things that we can talk with our internal staff about and how to showcase that beyond what we do. The safety piece of it, we do have a couple of campaigns that are in the works right now for safety, especially for people to not be distracted when they're around trains in particular. So we're happy to talk through that more, and we're still kind of in a nimble state in terms of the design and the elements that we'll have on the newsroom page.
Okay. Yeah, it would be lovely to see the financial transparency highlighted there, as it's a bit buried, although they're under reports and policies on the bottom of our page. But if that is a news page, I think that is important for citizens to see the access link. Ridership stats, whether that's putting our monthly report, perhaps in a one page, like we really have it in our packet. Those would be the items that I would like to see added to newsroom, as I think it's news. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry. One other item. What is the dollar figure for cost of the Reimagine process?
Well, the consultant contract, I believe the board approved the whole overall process for 2 years is about $4 million, and part of that is from grant funding, and I'm maybe stealing these guys' thunder, but they'll be able to answer more specifically. In terms of the Reimagine RTD of what our communications team will be doing, it is within the confines of our existing budget and how we are looking to optimize our resources for instance, the telephone town halls was already a method that we were going to employ this year. That now we're going to use as part of Reimagine. So our team is not looking to ask for any additional resources. We'll be doing that within the resources that we have allotted.
Okay, thank you.
Director Cook.
Just one note first before my question. I agree with the idea of, if we can, of putting benchmarks or somehow on the website. I've seen that for other Sound Transit, some other agencies where it's easily found and just seems forthcoming and helpful, having benchmark measures that we already collect put on the website. Okay, my question was on the quiet zone outreach, and again, thank you very much for that. In addition to seeking more communication, there were some concrete steps we indicated we'd follow up on, and I understand that's happening. So in other words, words, finalizing isn't just a matter of getting information out, but it's reporting on what we might be able to do once we've determined that in terms of the bells and the horns. At least that's for the G-line corridor. So in talking with Alan Miller, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Director Lewis.
Thank you. Paulette, so I see stakeholder engagement, community listening sessions, and public meetings. Can you tell me the difference between those?
Sure. So community listening sessions, this is my opinion, and this is me kind of framing what I believe is a good way to go into this engagement process, is the initial meetings that we do be listening sessions, because we want to listen to the public and the people we serve. And again, this is all about the people. And so for me, it's, yes, framing what we're here to do, but it's more about listening. So community listening sessions can be larger scale or smaller scale meetings that we do, for instance, in concert with church organizations or faith-based organizations, community organizations, where we're really there to listen. The public meetings are going to be more of a traditional, larger meeting, where we're there to, again, make a presentation and have some feedback at that meeting, whether that be tablet engagement or immediate results that aggregate, that everybody can see their responses right away, that type of thing. Stakeholder meetings are going to be with certain stakeholder groups, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later in the next committee meeting. So it's really about what's the intent and the scale of the meetings, but I wanted to differentiate those, and I'm glad you picked up on that, because initially out of the chute, it should be about listening. Yeah.
Okay, just a quick follow-up. With the listen-in sessions, I think one of the things that I've heard from constituents is sometimes they hear from us and they don't know what we do with the information that they provide to us. So can you talk a little bit about your plans, and you still may be in the planning phases of what we intend to do with the information that we collect from those listening sessions, and how it might inform the Reimagine process?
Yeah, we're very preliminary in the steps, because we're getting going with our consultant partners in figuring a lot of this out. And they have an amazing team, a very robust team with experts in various discipline areas. And so there'll be various ways that each of their team partners will be able to assist us in how best to showcase information. Again, the intent, however, is that every time we go out with a listening or feedback type of exercise, that we'll be taking that in. And some of this will be happening, throughout the next year and a half, until we kind of start to frame whatever this plan for the future looks like. And then, of course, the board is a key piece of that. And so how do we then present to you in a thematic way, so that you can see the feedback as we're getting it, and to bring everybody along with that? Because it really is going to be a systematic effort of process, and how one phase basically streamlines into the next. And so it's a great question, but I don't have specific answers for how yet, because we're really just kicking off.
As you're thinking about the how, the only thing I would ask for the focus groups is youth and our elders, just as a demographic to call out.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Director Rivera Malpieri.
Thank you, Chair Geisinger. A couple of things. This is really exciting, and so I think that this is our chance to really shine. And I would like to request two things. I would like to have a page called Heads Up, which would be like, this bus service is going to stop running, or you may see it late. As a transit rider, it would be so cool if there was one place I could go to while I'm waiting for a bus, wondering what's happening. Just a basic communications, running late, just want to give you a heads up. And the other is, on all of these outreach meetings, I would like to have a page that says, since you asked, where we would identify someone's question and respond to it. I think that would be cool, so that people could actually see that we are listening, and there's a place you can go to see what came from that. And then lastly, as you're doing these outreach to the media groups, are you looking, and I'm sure I know the answer to this, but are you looking at media briefings being besides the mainstream media like Univision and Asian.
Seminario.
Yeah, Seminario, but also the Asian culture, all of them.
Yes.
So that everybody's getting that information.
Absolutely. The media briefings, we do a lot with the media now, but this will be, I think, very important that we have, again, a broad-based approach as we have been doing media visits since I came back. We're going to be looking at even expanding that more as we keep the media informed and give them a chance to weigh in and give us feedback too and understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And so the diversity amongst media will be as important as the diversity of the public that we serve and we want to listen to.
All right, thank you.
Great. No other questions? Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. Okay.
I'll turn it over to our government relations.
Our government relations teams, you all coming up tonight? You can use these chairs. Sherry. Great, thank you. I was just reminded that Director Folska is on the phone. Hello, Director Folska. I apologize if I've missed you, but we will make a point of seeing if you have questions. All right, who's kicking it off? Are you, is it Brandaberry McKenna or Sherry? Are you starting anything?
Nope, we just have our team here, and Jennifer's missing tonight because she's on a well-deserved vacation. So we have the other BPMK folks here.
Okay.
Please just identify yourself as you start, okay?
Sure. Roger Sherman with CRL Associates. I'll just add a couple things, a couple notes to my written report. The first is, I think, the real significance of the November 2019 local elections. And I put in here, I actually was wrong. I think we've now have 9 mayors who are either term limited out or decided not to run. And we've got at least 2 that are in very, very competitive races. So the landscape of our local elected leadership is really changing. And I think it's coming at such an interesting time with Reimagine RTD that, we're going to be making, I'll be working with the communications people to make sure that we're also connecting with candidates that are running and that we get an early start in those races where we're going to see, real significant change from leadership that we've gotten to know over many, many years. And I think it's really something we need to keep track of. The analogy in Denver, you've seen some interesting votes recently with city council, 5 new members, and it has changed, the dynamics on council, how things are operating, and I think we're going to see similar things happening in our local jurisdictions, and how that impacts RTD is going to be something that we'll all, be watching and be thinking about. So that's the first thing. Citizen Advisory Committee, I mentioned, and you've received the letter, the co-chairs will be here in October. I did want to point out that one member, Roger Hara, is here. The committee has decided that they will always have a representative at every committee meeting or board meeting moving forward. They will then report back to the full committee what happens at the board committee meetings and study sessions and meetings. So that is part of their time commitment, that they want to be more fully engaged and understanding what the board is doing. They're also, frankly, really excited about General Manager Genova. I mean, his involvement and commitment to the committee, and Pauletta's engagement. She didn't mention, but I'll mention, I think she's presenting at their next work session about Reimagine RTD, and I believe there's a real interest in engaging the CAC in that process and using that resource to make presentations and to help us with the public engagement aspect. So very excited. I think, again, the timing is really good. And then lastly, you received a calendar notice from me. We've moved, that we've have a tradition of having the CAC and the board and the senior leadership team gather at a kind of a round table, a loose agenda, but an opportunity to talk about how the year has gone, what is coming in the future. I think it's a great way to have interaction. I know we've had tremendous participation by both the board and senior leadership team in the past. We discovered after we set the date that the original date conflicted with APTA, and anticipated a number of you all would be, both staff and board would be at APTA. So we've moved it back 1 week. So if you didn't get that on your calendar, please, we'll make sure that you get that taken care of. And that's it.
Great. Who's next? Oh, guess we'll do questions. All right. Director Williams.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's any interest in flipping that, since we're having a member of Citizens Advisory at a board meeting, if we are interested in having a board member at the Citizens Advisory Council meetings as well.
Do you want my opinion?
No?
Okay.
You asked
enough.
me. No, I'd like to see the board if they're interested in doing that, and if people are willing to step up. You know, there's 15 of us, that means once a year. What, they meet once a month?
Generally.
So that's like, once a year you'd have to go. Can I see how many hands, if anybody would be interested in doing that? Okay, we'll talk to you about it offline. Thank you. Sorry, Director Lewis would like to hear your opinion.
So would I.
I think it's great if people would come. I think we've had a challenge, but it's not been in recent years, where board members would come in. It ends up changing the dynamic of the discussion if board members are, so, but we've had recent, Director Minton's come, you've come, where they talk, listen a little bit, and they're there to create a relationship. I think that's the proper model. But if a board member gets overly engaged in the committee's discussion, it just changes the dynamic. So.
Okay. Director Minton.
Thank you. Yes, having attended the Citizens Advisory Committee, both recently, other times in the past, I continue to get a feeling that the CAC, and speaking to members directly, do not understand the purpose any longer of the committee. And honestly, I think some of them think it's a waste of their time. And especially in the middle of the afternoon, when some of them have jobs, and to have the commitment and then find out it perhaps is not as, there's not as much direction, there's not tasks. It's almost like, let's make up some tasks for the Citizens Advisory Committee. And that is things that it's not just me sitting on the side and watching the meeting, that's one-on-one conversations with them. So when I ask this, the Citizens Advisory Committee is a big part of your contract, right? Roger?
I think it's a small part of the contract. It was added on a few years ago, yeah.
Okay, so with them meeting monthly, if I were to have the opportunity to vote on where the committee should go, I would, understanding that we have some sort of a promise to the voters that we made with the fast tracks, along with a long other list of promises made from fast tracks, where we haven't fulfilled those things, that we should take the Citizens Advisory Committee and perhaps move them into a role where, one, they are self-moderating, self-regulating. They get to choose where they go. We already have staff members who attend these meetings and assist them. And if they want to meet quarterly and have less of a burden on taking time away from work, maybe that would fit them better. They can always still keep the Citizen Advisory Committee title and still participate in the Reimagine, the customer service panel that we've got, the two ADA panels. And I think we would realize a net savings to the agency by not having to take so much time of what is your contract and dedicate it to these people I've heard from that just not clear why we're making up things for them to do when Fast Tracks right now looks to be pretty much stalled for the moment, and that was the purpose of the committee. On that same line, it says that the Citizens Advisory Committee submitted a letter outlining recommendations on ways it could better represent citizens. Where is that letter? Was it? Okay, all right, I may have seen that. So that's my thoughts on the CAC, and I felt it was my duty, having been to these meetings, talked to these committee members, in that they feel very vague and without a purpose, to share that with the group, because I don't think everyone's had the opportunity to attend a CAC meeting and see perhaps frustration from some members. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Director Lubau?
Thank you, Chair Geisinger. I appreciated Director Minton's input. It seems to me that for a long time that the CAC is, in a certain sense, lacking in direction, and we've been struggling. We've all been struggling to find a way to have them have a useful, productive interaction with us. And so I loved seeing that letter in which there was a real intent for them to work with us in the reimagining RTD, and also doing what I think they were supposed to do, which is really try to be a funnel between the community and RTD and the community. It's not an easy thing to do, but I would suggest, because they are so talented, because I've the last few years been involved with interviewing them, it's an amazing group of people, just amazing people with experience with transportation and government, just really impressive. That they be sent our board packages, just like we are, and they can take a look at it and be kept up to date. This is what the board's doing, and these are smart people. If they want to do anything about it, they can propose it to CAC. Let's do something about this, and then propose to us, here's what we would like to do, and then we could see, does this make sense or not? So it would be putting it on them, because they have the expertise and the experience. They're really good people. So that's just a suggestion that I have to make them more relevant for themselves and for us. Thank you.
Director Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. Roger, the letter that was sent to us for the CEC, or CAC, excuse me, that's DPS jargon. Was there an intent behind that? Like, did you want the board to do something with that? And I have a follow-up question, too.
You know, I think they suggest some, I don't think it requires a board vote as much as just a signal that and I don't have the letter in front of me, but there are 3 or 4 recommendations. You know, I think both Director Minton and Lubau bring up, it's true, the committee has struggled. Okay. And the biggest challenge is you know, I think the agency and the board have to provide some direction for them. And I don't think they feel like their time is being wasted. I think they would like to be able to do more. And we have seen a marked difference in the last 6-8 months of their excitement and interest, and I think it's the general manager should get the credit for that. We've had every senior leadership team member present and cycle through the committee, and there are some real concrete ways that they're going to engage. And I think that transition from a fast tracks focused to an RTD focused was, you know, it took some thought, and we've had to feel our way about that. Okay. But I think what was included in that is a real reflection of what we heard from board members and a result of conversations with the senior leadership team.
Okay. Rolf, is there opportunity for us to have this conversation in greater detail as a board? Maybe not here, but in the coming weeks? It sounds like it's something we may want to chat about.
Could I suggest maybe if we are going to do the roundtable in October, do you want to do it as just a board, or, that might be a good opportunity when we've got everyone there.
I am only a portion of the board, so I won't speak in behalf of the rest of the board members. I'm okay with that, but I'll defer to other folks.
This is Rolf Auspach, General Counsel. If I understand the question, you're wondering if it's okay under Robert's rules and the board's operating procedures to have if you schedule a meeting, whether it's a special meeting or a study session perhaps, or whatever, something like that could be worked out. Of course, if you have a quorum or a certain number over what's needed, you'll need to give notice and have it be a public meeting, which it is anyway. Citizens Advisory Committee meetings are noticed in public.
Well, maybe I'll suggest that we look at the roundtable as something to target and try to plan for that, look at their letter so they're getting a response from us and we have a chance, a noticed meeting to talk with them. Does that sound good?
Yeah, great.
My last question. You said a member of the CAC was here. Where are you? Hi. Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Brenda Mary McKenna, are you next?
Hi, it's Julie McKenna here for Brandeberry McKenna Public Affairs, and just a couple of things to highlight from our report.
Just need to move it closer.
We met with Representative Chris Hansen, who's a member of the Joint Budget Committee, to talk about transportation issues. You all may recall he has been very active in looking for alternative means to find additional monies for transportation, approximately $350 million to cover bonds to help with the financial deficit in the transportation sector. We invited him to attend the RTD board meeting in December to discuss with you all kind of the vision he's looking for and to make that connection, and he's very excited to be here. And he and Senator Moreno will both be attending the meeting in December. Additionally, we've been attending the 239 task force meeting. That's the bill that asked CDOT to convene a stakeholder meeting to meet with stakeholders to address the impacts of emerging technologies and changes in business models on our roads and the funding for the roads. That has become a monumental task. That committee has morphed into 5 subcommittees, all that have to report back, and CDOT has to issue a report that would recommend fees to help fund these changes and methods to address environmental impacts and increase efficiencies, all by November 1st. So a lot of meetings to cover and things to be done, but we will keep you apprised of that progress as well. And Megan has a couple.
This is Megan. As if you haven't seen the paper today, the special session is not going to happen. I think President Garcia announced it on Twitter. The governor, I thought a couple days before that he decided that they weren't going to do it. I think there was division even within the Democratic caucus about whether it was a good idea. I don't think it was just a Democrat-Republican thing, in my understanding from talking to legislators. We, as BBMK, have been meeting with a bunch of different groups, DRCOG, Conservation Colorado, CML, and CCI, to just kind of see what they're looking at as far as transportation proposals, and just continuing to meet with those folks to make sure that they know that we always want to be engaged. And I think RTD, this board, has been doing a great job of getting out there and making sure that everyone knows that we want to be at the table for every conversation about transportation. And that the other thing, which I have already mentioned before, but just a reminder that we're on October 28th at 9 a.m. We're going to go before the TLRC for our update. We really hope that board members can come. As this TLRC, there's some new folks on it, so it'd be a great way to kind of show how active RTD has been, and really would appreciate the board participation. And that's it.
Questions, Director Minton?
Yes, regarding Representative Hansen and potentially in running bills to increase or create or add fees to fund bonding. Apparently that's the route he's going instead of going to the voters, is what it sounds like, because the voters have not passed that. So now we're going to create fees. That's his intent. That's what I read here, right?
And I think that's a great thing to discuss with him when he comes before the board. Some of the things he has mentioned have been characterized as fees. I don't know for sure if that's the route they would go without going to the voters or not. He's thrown a lot of things at the wall for people to consider and get feedback on. I don't think he's settled on anything in particular, but I think that's a great discussion point to have with him.
Okay. I'll look forward to that discussion with him. Has he mentioned any specific fees?
He has. He's had some of the things that he has thrown out there, air quality, maybe a fee on fuel for air quality, an electric vehicle fee. Certainly they've talked about transportation network company fees, maybe there's something there, and I think the 239 task force is also looking at that. They also are looking at the fees that we currently charge for out-of-state plates and the registration cliff that goes down as your cars get older. Those are all things that they're evaluating the impacts of on our fee structures for funding transportation.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I'm glad both Hans and Marino will be coming in to visit us. Thanks.
I'll just ask Director Folska, are you there? Do you have any questions? Nope. Director Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, Mike, you're next. Is it possible that you could send us a calendar invite for October 28th at 9 a.m.?
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
That would be, I don't know how the board office reacts to that. You might have to send it to our mom, and then she might send it to us.
I will follow proper protocol.
That's what I was about. Thank you.
Well, I'll ask real quick, and not looking for a long explanation, but you met with Dr. Cog and Conservation Colorado and CCI. What are you learning?
So with Dr. Cog, we were just kind of following up on the discussions on the empowered MPO and just kind of making sure that whatever they're looking to do, that RTD is at the table, which I'm sure Roger's doing. I know General Manager Nova has been at the table, but we wanted to come from all sides because I just don't want them to not think of us as we're part of the lead team to be talking to.
Roger?
Just to add something to that, representatives from the Metro Mayor's Caucus will be here at this committee meeting in October to present their thoughts and get some initial feedback on the enhanced MPO concept.
Great, thank you. Anything else? I think you've already asked your question, right? You're still set. Okay. Director Luba.
What is enhanced MPO? Thank you.
You'll find out in October. It's basically an idea to provide more powers to MPOs that would include the ability to do funding. MPO.
Dr. Cog.
Dr. Cog.
There are 5 MPOs in Colorado, and ours is Dr. Cog.
Metropolitan
It's the
Planning
Metropolitan,
Organization.
Right.
But we lovingly call it Dr. Cog here.
Great. Director Minton.
Director Luba, what that means is giving unelected officials in metropolitan planning organizations the right to assess taxes. And Dr. Cog, so it's adding another layer of government into the transportation question. That's what enhanced MPO concept is.
Did you have a question?
I'm
That's fine. I just didn't know if I should move on to Chair Tisdale.
No, but I believe that was in one of the articles that we had, so not just my impression, but that was.
Yeah, it's an early stage. It's just one discussion, and as Roger Sherman said, we have, I think it's Jackie Millay and maybe somebody else coming in October to speak to us and explain to us what it is. But, everybody's looking for transportation money after the proposition's passed, and that's just one of the options. Chair Tisdale?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just having been an officer of Dr. Cog, I do want to point out Dr. Cog consists of elected officials who are appointed by their particular elected body to serve on the board of Dr. Cog, which consists of 58 jurisdictions, 8 counties, and 50 municipalities, and that operates a district roughly the size of the state of Connecticut. It is not a tax levying organization. It does, however, distribute tax dollars that come back to to Colorado from the federal government, and that's its principal job, along with being the area agency on aging. So I just offer that footnote for clarification as to the role of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, Dr. Cog. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Mike.
All right. Well, greetings. It's Mike Dino from Squire Patton Boggs. And as we sit here, and Congress is out of session until after Labor Day. But they did get a lot of things done before they decided to leave Washington. An important thing for this board, following the credit risk premium related to your RIF loan, my colleague Patty Dorsch worked very closely with the two U.S. Senate offices to have legislation introduced by Senator Gardner and Senator Bennett that would mandate the U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary to pay back all loans that meet their the criteria of having fulfilled their repayment. So that's another escalation in this effort to get your money back. And that legislation, it's hard to speculate early on what its viability is, but to have bipartisan support in the Senate is helpful. And it also lays down a marker to maybe put that legislation into other legislation that might ultimately get passed by Congress. So that's a good development. RTD did receive a grant for electric buses and the support for those buses to the tune of $2.6 million. So it's nice to get some of the grant money. Or one of 38 successful applicants that was able to receive that money. So congratulations. The Senate, their Environmental and Public Works Committee, did kick off the reauthorization for the 2021 transportation authorization. They did pass a bill. They didn't pass anything to figure out how to pay for it, but that's left up to another committee. And it's just one committee of the U.S. Senate. It may get a full hearing in the fall in the full U.S. Senate, but the House still has to act. And the current authorization, the FAST Act, doesn't expire until 2020 of next year, September 30th. So we got some time on that. And one last positive note that wasn't in the report you received. The U.S. House and Senate, as well as the President, agreed to the fiscal year 2020 budget framework. So that's good. That doesn't mean all the appropriations will be passed in time for next fiscal year to start on October 1. But a number of them should pass. We'll see a continuing resolution. We shouldn't see a government shutdown. Certainly the tragedies over the weekend, though, and if they do get into some discussion and some back and forth and some disagreement on how to deal with issues related to the violence, it could endanger some of the appropriations. But no shutdown is anticipated at this point. So that's my report for this month. And Sherry, you've got something.
Just a side note, this is Sherry Ellerbach. Congressman Perlmutter is working in the House on the credit risk premium. So in addition to our senators introducing the bill, Congressman Perlmutter is also working on the House side. And also for the grant that we received for $2.6 million, our senators and our congressional delegation, they did write letters of support. And I really think that helped make a difference in us being one of the chosen ones to get the money that we ask for. So they're working hard on our behalf back in D.C. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. That was a very competitive grant, it sounded like, so it was really great. Just a real quick question. You went in some of this in your report. It could be not a real quick question, but I'm not asking for a real long. This is the highway portion of the transportation bill that just came out of committee. Is that right?
Yes,
And
correct.
so they would need a transit portion and a couple of others. Those all come from different committees and then have to go up to the whole House.
Mm-hmm.
It's banking.
does transit.
Okay.
Yeah, banking does transit, and then of course I think I'm trying to remember what committee would deal with the funding part, but another committee deals with the funding, and then of course in the House it's the Transportation Infrastructure Committee that would kick it off over there.
And there's something working its way through there as well, or?
No,
No.
not yet.
Okay. All right.
We don't want to get too far ahead.
Yeah. Any other questions? Great. Thank you. That's great. All righty. Other matters? We're through with our updates. Anybody have anything to add? Our next meeting date is October 8th. As Roger Sherman said we'll have representatives from Metro Mayor's Caucus to talk to us about the EMPOs and other things that they're working on. And this meeting is adjourned. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. We'll be back. Thank you, Sherry. Good.